Hi, I'm Mark Mazzaferro, and it's time for another episode of Fire Facts with Fire Chief Chris Conception. Chris, thanks for taking some time out of your day.
Thanks for having me on again.
Absolutely. We have a guest here today, so why don't you introduce our guest and tell us why she's here?
Absolutely, and I thought it was very important that we have a local hometown hero, and I thought it was very important to introduce her to the town. We have Tabitha Garcia with us today, and on October 21st, she saved a life right here in the city of Vacaville, and I thought it was very important to get her recognized for that. And so, Tabitha, why don't you tell us what you saw and what you did?
Sure. So I was driving my son to school, and we turned off our street, which is Woodside Circle, onto Evergreen, and I see this man laying half in and out of the street, and some dogs around him. He looked like he'd been walking his dogs, and I see a car on the other side of the street with someone on the phone, and I didn't see anyone helping the man. So I threw my car in park, and I jumped out. I told my son to call 911, and I ran over to the gentleman. First thing I did was pet the dog to make sure it was going to be okay to touch his master. And I see him, he's blue already. I feel his face, he's cold to the touch. I feel for a pulse on his neck and on his wrist, and he has no pulse at that point. So I just started doing chest compressions. I felt from my spot and just started doing compressions on this man.
And at some point, your guys arrived, your guys and gals in the fire ambulance showed up and took over, I guess.
Yes, Engine and Medic 71 showed up, and I got the email the next day saying what a hero Tabitha was, because the outcome of this was the patient that Tabitha did CPR on, or did chest compressions on, actually was able to walk out of the hospital with no deficits whatsoever.
So he was perfectly fine.
Yes.
It was like it never happened.
Yes, and actually after Tabitha started CPR, the medics told me that they had actually shocked this person 5 times with their heart monitor.
While they were there, or so after you got done, when they arrived, they started giving them the electroshock things. They have the little portable defibrillator.
Yes.
And that got him back in better shape, and they transported him to the hospital.
Yes.
So what goes through your mind when you see a man laying there, and I'm going to assume you're not a healthcare professional.
I'm not, but I wonder if I was one in a past life, because I was very calm. I was a Cub Scout leader and learned these skills through that, and I just did it. I just didn't see any other way to not help him. You know, I was running on pure adrenaline at that point.
Sure, and it was just a gut reaction. I'm going to go help this guy. He's blue. He needs help. Dogs are good. Off you go.
Yes, and I remember as I'm doing this, there were people that came around. One lady grabbed the dogs, and another neighbor of mine had walked up, making sure I was okay, and I just kept doing what I was doing until the team showed up.
Now, this happens a lot in Vacaville, right, Chris? People collapse, and residents pull over and just help them, right? I mean, this is an everyday thing here.
Actually, that's unusual, and that's why it's so important to recognize Tabitha for what she did, because she definitely saved a life. If it weren't for you, that man wouldn't be with us today. And that's also what I wanted to talk about, was the importance of CPR. And Tabitha told us, she learned CPR just from watching her son's Boy Scout troop. That's how easy it is. You don't have to get absolutely certified, but the fact that you took action is what was most important. And that's what I want to get out to the town, was that there are going to be these times when people go down, and seconds matter. Seconds matter. It's going to take a little bit of time, and we get out there within 5 minutes from getting dispatched. But seconds matter, and if that person can get the help of even just compressions before we get there, it increases their chances of survivability just all that much more.
And that's something we kind of talked about before we got started here, how CPR has changed over the years from, breaths, compressions to, I believe now all they want you to do is compressions, right? I mean, if you're not a trained professional.
Yes, all they want you to do is chest compressions. Just find the landmark and just do chest compressions at a rate of about 100 to 120 beats per minute. So 2 per second, if you can figure that out. And really, it is all that simple. It's called sidewalk CPR. I mean, it is something that you still do or should learn, but it's something that the City of Vacaville Fire Department offers. If you get on our website or call admin, and we will be more than willing to offer you the classes. So
you're all done. The ambulance has arrived and taken this gentleman to the hospital, and what happened next? I mean, I can only imagine.
Yeah, I didn't think he made it. I'm going to be honest with you. I was watching the paramedics and the team do what they did. They had defibbed him like 4 times while I was standing there. My son was there, who's 13. And I mean, I was at this point now crying. It's just like the adrenaline is falling, and I'm emotional. And they were getting ready to intubate him, and that's when I told my son, "Okay, let's go. I don't think he's going to make it. Let's just say a prayer for him and go." So we went to the school, and the rest of my day, I was off that day. So as soon as I got home, took a shower, I was just very emotional. I didn't know if this man had made it. I didn't know what happened, and eventually called the fire department around 3 p.m. because every time I turned around, I was crying, not knowing. Sure. And someone did call me back and said that they couldn't release a whole lot of information, but they did say that when they left him at the hospital, he was showing positive signs of life, which I was shocked. I was like, he's alive. And so, and then it just progressed from there. There was posts on Facebook, and I've connected with some of his family members, and it's been great.
And that was a question I was going to have. Have you heard from him or his family since then?
I have not heard from him as of yet. However, I've been back and forth with one of his sisters, and I do believe that I'll get to meet him eventually. So
yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah, I did. This is really cool too. Last Friday, I was going to get some gas, and I actually saw him walking his dogs.
Oh, okay.
Which I thought, it was actually really cool to see him, and I know that that's something that he loves. So that made me feel great.
That kind of brought it full circle.
It did.
Too,
It really did. It really did.
Wow. Well, that is spectacular. I've been thinking about this. I mean, I read the emails and I saw it in the paper, and I'm thinking to myself, man, would I be able to do that? And I think that's a question a lot of folks have. But absolutely. But in this case, it was just reflex, and amazing. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm sure his family thanks you profusely too. Maybe not directly, but I mean, that's amazing. Chief, what can you say about this?
I mean, I don't have the words really to thank you. I mean, that's what's most important is the fact that you took action. Most people will just sit there and be, they just be frozen because of what they see, but you actually took action. I mean, you took what you learned and you put it into action, and that's what was most important, and as a result, you saved a life. It doesn't take that much effort, but you have to be willing to take that initial action, and you were able to do that. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you. I thank you. The city thanks you, and I'm sure everybody watching is very proud to be able to say they live in the same community with someone who'd make that effort to save someone's life that they didn't even know. You didn't know this man, and that takes a lot of courage. So again, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, we're back with another guest here on Fire Facts. Chris, why don't you introduce our guest and tell us why she's here?
Thanks, Mark. I thought what we would do today is to introduce people to a part of the fire department that most people don't know is part of the fire department, and that is code enforcement. So with us today, we've got Renee Souza, and we're going to talk to her about what code enforcement is all about and what they do for the city.
Well, that makes it easy. Renee, why don't you tell us what code enforcement is all about?
Well, code enforcement is a vital part of a city organization. We deal with things from homeless encampments to hoarding to complaints about garbage cans, basketball hoops on the street, overgrowth of vegetation, blight within the city.
And is this process, is it complaint driven? Are we proactive or reactive?
It is complaint driven.
So if somebody sees something in their neighborhood, they should either go online or make a phone call or something to let us know what's going on.
That's correct. Yeah, they could call in. We have a number that they could call, or they could go onto our website and make a formal complaint.
So code enforcement in the fire department, Chief, explain that. Why not some other? Why not public works or planning or somebody like that?
Yeah, normally it's under the PD or under the building department even, but in the city of Vacaville, we've got it under the fire department. And it works well. Renee works well with our prevention department as well as our suppression folks out there. So I think it's a good team effort. So we like having code enforcement in the fire department.
Well, it kind of makes sense when you think about it. And you know, some of the things you mentioned, hoarding, overgrowth of vegetation, those could lead to potential fire hazards.
Correct.
Or at least possible.
Absolutely,
It's a safety concern certainly for you guys. So let's a big part of the fire department isn't just putting out fires; it's preventing fires as well. So
Correct.
clearly, her role is well suited for the department. So tell us about some of the things you've seen and done out there, Renee. I don't want to call them horror stories, but give us an example of a typical day for you in code enforcement.
Well, we average about anywhere from 15 to 20 complaints per day. So as we come in the morning, there's just myself and one other officer right now for the whole city. So we have a full caseload. And basically we just go through the complaints. We find out what's imminent danger. You know, if there's something going on that we have to respond immediately to, we do that. So we just have to, make sure that we respond to the ones that are life, health, or safety threatening right away. And so we respond to those. It could be a homeless encampment where people are lighting fires to keep warm. Could be a hoarding issue where people are blocking their access in and out of their apartment building or things like that. And then again, there's people that are living in unpermitted structures that could catch fire. So things like that. And then overgrowth of vegetation, we have emergency vehicle access areas where there's a lot of overgrowth and our vehicles can't get through. So we notify the property owners to make sure that they keep those areas clear for our vehicles.
So you get an email, you prioritize it, you decide you're going to go address it, you get out there, and what happens? I mean, if there's somebody there, do you educate them? Do you cite them? What's the process?
We do. We try to educate them. A lot of people don't know that the city has a code enforcement department. They're not aware that there's ordinances that they have to follow. So we educate them. A lot of them are real receptive to us letting them know because they're not aware that they have violations on their property. So a lot of times our goal is to have voluntary compliance.
Sure.
A lot of times we get it, but there's sometimes we don't. And when we don't get compliance, then we do have to go do a process where we notify the property owner. Could go into a citation process, and if they still don't comply, then it could go into where we have to obtain a warrant.
And how far would it go? I mean, obtain a warrant for their arrest, or
no, it's
to
basically
to handle the property, to clean it up ourselves.
To clean it up.
You can't just go on someone's property and do whatever you want.
No.
Right. It's an abatement warrant, which
see.
allows us to hire a contractor to go in and take care of the violations.
And then eventually that ends up on their property tax. If they don't pay it,
Yes.
it's like weed abatement, I guess. The same
exactly.
idea.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that's the important thing that I want people to know is that they're here to help. I mean, that's as you saw or heard from Renee. The enforcement is the absolute last thing that we want to do. The warrant is the absolute last act that we want to take. We don't want to do that.
Right.
We first want to prevent, and then we want to educate and let people know what they need to do to keep the city of Vacaville a safer place.
Yeah, and I think one of the important points also is that it's complaint driven. I think a lot of people think we drive around looking for code violations. Wouldn't that be a nice situation to be in where we're so caught up, we're looking for stuff.
Yeah.
We've got plenty to do just on residents contacting us.
Absolutely.
So at the end of the day, it's 5:30, 6 o'clock, whenever you knock off. We're all done. Those 15 or 20 complaints are handled, right?
Correct.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes.
And then another 15 the next day. It's
Right.
that there's Oh, that's good. Our residents
Yeah.
are paying attention. That's
Yes.
part of why Vacaville looks as good as it does too. I
True.
think, you know, generally speaking, you don't see, you know, cars up on blocks and people parking their trucks on the lawn and things like that. That's part of what you
Yes.
do too, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. All right. How do you feel about having code enforcement in your department, Chris? Kind of.
Well, just from the prevention standpoint, I think it's a great thing to have, and the education standpoint. You know, I'm very big on educating the community on everything, and that's what they're here for. So to have them in the fire department to help carry that safety message and carry that prevention and education, that kind of thing, I think it helps out quite a bit to have them on our team, and it's great to have them on our team. And you know, you're absolutely right. The city of Vacaville is lucky, but it's not because we're not being proactive. And I think that, you know, Renee and her team are very proactive and go a long way as far as helping the citizens into compliance and making sure they're doing what they need to be doing.
Now, Renee, you said you've been doing this for 15 years, right?
Correct.
And you've been in Vacaville 5 or 6 months. Without naming names, compare us to other communities you worked in. You know, I kind of mentioned it seems like we're in pretty good shape, but
Yeah, I believe so too. I notice the people that I do come across, like I said, they're actually very friendly, and they're willing to work with me. You know, again, to educate them and bring their properties into compliance, to let them know that's a reflection of the community, and let them know that, you know, it has to do with property values and things like that, and it gives them another idea of, oh yeah, I didn't think of it that way. So it's just nice, and they're willing to work with us and bring their properties into compliance.
so if someone has a complaint, Renee, who should they call, or what's the number to call?
The number is 449-5693.
Email too, or
Email is codeenforcement@cityofvacaville.com.
Good deal. Well, thank you for all you do to keep our city looking fresh and bright and happy
Thank
and
you.
good. And Chief, anything else we want to talk about before we say goodbye?
No, I think thank you for letting us have the two guests that we've had today. I think it's very important to first recognize our heroes and kind of you gave us the opportunity to tell you a little bit more about what your fire department does for the city of Vacaville.
Good deal. Well, thank you both for your time today, and thank you for watching this episode of Fire Facts. See you next time.